Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Gaming Stooges Talks Podcast. We are the Gaming Stooges.
I'm Jack.
You can call me Cloud.
And I'm Landon.
We hope you enjoyed today's discussion, and if you do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Twitch, or joining our Discord. Let's get on with the show.
Hiya, folks. It's time for another recap. One more season down. We're actually 2 full seasons through the Gaming Stooges Talks Podcast. Howdy, folks.
2 full years
2
of
full
podcasting.
podcasting.
Just think of time keeps on ticking.
The years start coming, and they do, in fact, not stop coming. If you are watching the VOD or watching this live, Jack is in the darkness.
It's true. The lights in my room are burnt out, and I need to buy new ones. So
Probably a new lamp.
maybe. We'll see.
Anyway, so last year at the end of the season, we did a recap of all of the first 24 episodes that had happened up till that point. So we're just making this a tradition. We're going to go over all of the episodes we went through with season 2 and just some quick thoughts about how we felt about those episodes. If we can remember anything we might have missed speaking about at the time, or anything we can really come up with, just to kind of like share our thoughts on the whole process, kind of get a little bit of backstage pass into our inner thoughts about the podcast, which is
the behind the scenes.
Yes.
And
if you will.
If you're watching live on Twitch, write a comment to ask a question.
Absolutely.
About anything about Season 2, or if you have any interest or you want to know anything about the upcoming Season 3, which will be starting in 2 weeks.
All right. But we're going to jump in. We're going to start talking about our episodes. Starting with episode 26 was the first episode of season 2, and that was a podcast on the Legend of Zelda series, part 1. We did not do the whole series because that would have been a very long podcast, so we split it up.
Nightmare.
We have yet to do part 2. That is spoilers. That is planned for season 3. We will be doing it fairly
That's a
soon.
freebie.
It's a freebie.
It's coming up.
It's coming.
You don't even have to ask about that.
Yep. But yeah, first, the Legend of Zelda series, we did all of the, from the first game up until, when was the cut?
Wind
Wind
Waker.
Waker was where we cut off. So yeah, we talked about like, the design of each of the games. We talked about the different dungeons that were in each one, just kind of like how the series evolved over time, from that point to that point. You guys have any thoughts you'd like to share on that episode?
I like Zelda.
It was pretty long time ago, so like I can't imagine we remember that episode too well.
I remember editing that episode.
You remember liking Zelda?
That's true.
I was the one that edited that episode.
That's true.
To date, I think it's the only podcast I've edited.
I could not edit that one. I think I was out of town, I think, that week, because that was early April.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually when my family does a trip to the coast. So I remember we had to do that, and then I just fucked off. I was like, perfect. I get to relinquish my duties. See ya. And I don't have to deal with that. But imagine this. What if we had done the entire Zelda series up to that point?
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
And Jack had to edit that. Almost like a certain Dragon Ball podcast we had done.
Almost like we had a precedent for not doing that again, because we had a couple podcasts that went way too long by today's standards. We've been trying to cut it down a bit. Turns out about an hour and a half is actually the perfect length for a podcast. You don't need to do 3.5 hours.
You don't need to do 2.5 hours, which is what the Zelda series part 1 was,
right.
But you know, that's what happens.
I had a pretty fun time, even despite the fact that I didn't play a whole lot of the games. It did allow me to actually beat the first game for the first time.
You did. You were like going back and trying to play some of the Zelda games.
Yeah,
I do remember that. And I went back and I had played Zelda 1 again on the Game & Watch that had released. So like, and then we were playing the Wind Waker at the time for the channel, Wind Waker HD. So like, we were playing some of the games at the time and, you know, remembering some of the joys of those games, some of the sorrows of some of the games we didn't want to revisit.
Yeah.
So, the Zelda series is a series that, especially for Jack and I, is near and dear to our hearts. Cloud, it's like his liver or something.
I'm very casual when it comes to Zelda. Like I kind of like a few of the games of the franchise, and then the rest of them are just like, oh yeah, that's neat. I will never get more than 20% of the way through that game.
So it's more like your gallbladder.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good episode though. I'm looking forward to, even if I don't have a lot to contribute, just the structure of the podcast, the back and forth, it was just really flowed really well. So I think when we get to part 2, even if I'm not able to contribute a lot to personal experience, it'll be a fun episode, just like the first part was.
I'm very much like, if you've been in our Discord, or you watch some of our Twitch streams, I've mentioned that I'm going back and playing more of Tears of the Kingdom to get ready for said podcast, because that is the one Zelda game that I have like just not complete in some fashion, and oh boy, we're gonna be in for it.
Oh yeah,
the revisit for Tears of the Kingdom.
So next episode that we did, episode 27, was the podcast on console revisions, where we talked about all these different systems that had various models that were released after the initial SKUs. And that one was actually even longer than the first episode. That was almost 3 hours long.
Oh, goody.
But you know, it didn't feel like it. Like, we had a lot to say. There was a lot worth talking about. I mean, we went through pretty much everything major, at least. Unfortunately, we did not go over a bajillion different releases of the PC Engine / TurboGrafx 16. Probably for the best that we didn't, because we already spent 3 hours talking about everything else.
I mean, we also personally don't have a whole lot of to say about those, but yeah, there's a lot of consoles out there that have been redone. We don't need to talk about the TurboGrafx 16. No. I'm sorry.
But I did have a lot of fun discussing various stuff like the different 3DS models. The 3DS family of systems in particular is just a favorite of mine. Just collect and like use the different ones. There's just a lot of expression there. You had the various upgrades to the PS3, for instance. And thank God they upgraded the PS3 with new revisions, because those first ones are not... They don't hold up the best. They're not.
I still like that both. I feel like both the 360 and the. Are you having fun over there?
You could say it hasn't aged the best.
We're not there yet.
I know.
I feel like both the 360 and the PS3 had the same like console revision like chart, where you had the original models, like the original like 18 different versions of the first model in various forms, either different hard drives, different USB drives, and so on. And then they had probably the superior version of the Slim in both cases, the S and the Slim.
Yeah.
And then they made a slightly inferior, or in the PS3's case, way more inferior.
Extremely inferior.
Yeah, extremely inferior version of the console.
Like, as far as functionality, it works better than the original one. The models of those two, but yeah, they're not as good as the middle one. It's weird. It's like the middle child's the best one.
Sort of like, and back down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like that episode a lot.
It was really fun.
I actually get to talk about the PS1, not the PlayStation, the PS1. Not every day you get to talk about that one.
It's true. The actual literal PS1.
It's a pretty good model. I mean, it doesn't do a whole lot besides just be smaller, but it's cute.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on console revisions, Jack?
not really. I remember really liking this episode.
Yeah.
It sparked some good discussions, and we talked a lot about, like, you know, which version of each console is the definitive version, and it was fun.
Yeah. Before we move on, I do want to interject with a quick question from one of our audience members before the chat goes beyond that. Al asks, kart racing podcast when? And, actually that's a good idea. I still need more experience with more kart racers, but it would be easier to do a podcast than to make a big video playing almost every kart racer I could ever think of.
What? You're not going to do the part of the kart racer video?
Don't let him cop out.
One of these
don't let him cop out.
One of these days I will try to do it, but that is definitely like a really long time from now. The next episode, on episode 28, we did a revision of our top games of all time. We expanded it from 10 to 20. This was about a 10-year-ish anniversary edition episode of the original one, because we had done our top 10 games of all time back in like 2014. So we figured 2024, let's redo it and let's expand it into a bigger list. And that was a 3.5 hour podcast.
I would say
quite a long one.
It was, but I remember this one being a fun one.
It was a lot of fun.
I do like... I like when we do our year-end reviews and when we do our top the top lists.
Yeah.
That we also have we have a long history of doing top lists.
Yeah.
Top lists.
That was sort of our discussion for the channel prior to doing the podcast. So it was just it's in our blood.
It's a bread and butter
also,
structure for us. So we just kind of handle that structure well.
You're welcome, by the way. I believe that I was the editor and the one that had the idea for the first top 10 games of the year video. Not that it was like a new idea in general. It was just like, hey, we should do this. Why not? And
I know we had done like a year recap, I think, for 2013.
Yeah.
That was messy.
That was the first big video I edited for the channel. It was very long and took a lot of editing. I learned a lot of editing skills
from just that video.
Yeah,
that's good. You need some skills.
I was really happy with this video, this episode though, especially because a lot of my favorites that were between 11 and 20 had definitely changed. I don't remember. We didn't really get to talk about our 11 through 20 the first time around, but I was able to actually include that. And even a few games between 6 and 10 were a little different, shifted around. So it was really interesting to see how things had changed. Although, to be fair, my top 5 was pretty much the same. It was just a slightly different order. But hey.
Yeah,
I think
the same
one
for all
game
of us.
One game in my top 5 might have changed. Because I probably went Mario Kart 8, as a top game now, as opposed to... I'd have to re-look at my list of what I went with. But, I know that was obviously 10 years ago. Almost a thought.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that the game's, almost 10 years old now, but still.
Our original top 10 games of all time video is about the same age as our the original Mario Kart 8.
Yeah. Came out around the same time.
Crazy to say. I think it was a month before Mario Kart had come out, but
I already don't remember exactly whether or not I think I hadn't finished Final Fantasy VI in time. I don't remember if I finished Final Fantasy VI in time for my for the top 20 games of all time podcast, but if I didn't, which I don't think I did, it's definitely in my top 20 now. So if we'll join us in 2034 when there's going to be 3 things changed on my top 20 list.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I remember really liking this podcast. I do remember getting very tired towards the end just because this was a long podcast. And this was, I think, still back when we were we had started this like fairly late in the evening.
We would start it at like 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, as opposed to our current 8 p.m., 5 p.m.
8-5, yeah.
It was before I got my new job, actually.
Yeah.
So
we would have
it.
still been using the old start time.
Any other thoughts on our top 20 games of all time episode? Your own personal perspective?
No, like I can't think of anything, honestly. I remember that it continued the joke of me talking about a game right after Landon talks about a game.
Yeah.
Just because of where they happen to land on our lists.
It'd be like that.
But it was really fun. It had been like that long since we had done a top 10 games of all time, or top anything games of all time.
We did
video. So it was cool to see like all of the stuff that had come out in the decade in between like get added, and like the slight revisions that were made, even if some of the placements were mostly the same. I think in my case, my top 5 was probably exactly the same, if not maybe one spot different. But
yeah,
I'm actually double checking mine because I had posted it on our Discord in the spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact 2 of these games were not in my top 5 the first time around. The Legend of Heroes, oh my goodness. The Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 2, and Chrono Trigger were not in my top 5 for the first time around. I had not included Chrono Trigger in the original video, and I had played it at that point. I had just forgot about it when we were making that video.
Wow.
That explains
that. Going back, I was like, why the fuck is Chrono Trigger like not in my top 10 at all? Like, it is
just completely forgotten.
Easily. It's easily, like, arguably for a lot of people, it is a top game
of all time.
Period. Yeah.
I think all 3 of us have it in our personal top 5s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's because it's that good.
It is.
Speaking of Chrono Trigger,
it really
is. It just had its 30th anniversary.
It did. I think we're good.
Yeah.
We got it. Jack? Huh?
You gonna play it?
Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, because
fuck off with anything else you're playing.
I was gonna say we had agreed. Because I'm doing the Pixel Remaster series, I'll get to do Final Fantasy 6, but you get Chrono Trigger, so you got to do it for us.
I will at some point, for sure.
So you get to be the lucky boy. But we're going to move on to the next episode. Episode 29 was licensed games, which, obviously,
ooh, yes,
not all video games are just, original IP characters getting made. There's a lot of video games out there that are based on existing IP that get licensed out. You got a lot of Disney games. You got the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games Jack had talked about. You've got just various games. You have games as good as like the mid 2000s WWE SmackDown versus Raw titles, and then you have games as bad as WWE Crush Hour, a really bad Twisted Metal ripoff. So
hell yeah.
I would think that was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed being able to like reminisce about a bunch of games, because there's a lot of like licensed games I didn't really get to talk about on the channel before, and I got to bring up stuff like the Smurfs and WWE Crush Hour and Warpath Jurassic Park, a really bad fighting game. I can't believe they managed to mess up a fighting game with dinosaurs. What a shame. But yeah.
It's fucked up.
Landon, how'd you feel about the licensed games episode?
I remember enjoying it. I don't remember if I had a whole lot to say in that one specifically. I remember, a lot of the games, like a lot of the licensed games I distinctly remember playing are Star Wars related. So I know we talked about Battlefront 2 or Lego. I played some of the Lego games. Or Shrek 2 for the GameCube. Biggest licensed game I probably ever played. I did play some shitty licensed games back in the day, but especially now. Like, there's not a whole lot of like. I mean, there's a lot of anime licensed games, like anime manga
you got,
licensed
Dragon
games that I'll
Ball
play.
has a lot. We talked plenty about Dragon Ball. Sandland's great.
Actually, we talked about Sandland because that was like that was out around the time that we were talking about that, and that was a game I had a lot of fun with last year. And that's, it's a Bandai licensed game, but it was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's a pretty good episode. 6 out of 10. You don't have to listen to it.
6 out of 10. It's skippable.
Jack, any thoughts to share?
I remember this one being really fun, but I don't remember anything about it specifically, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like, it was a good one. I just, I do remember talking about Tony Hawk at one point and bringing up, like, hey, isn't this technically a licensed game? But outside of that, 6 out of 10, you can skip it.
Al asks,
doesn't move the plot along.
Al's telling us to play that Jujutsu Kaisen game that came out last year.
No.
Gross.
And KJHD53 asks, how soon can we expect the next Pokemon podcast? We've been doing 2 per season, so we'll get around to Generation 5 fairly soon. It will be next season, and Generation 6 as well. So
gross, but can you answer the question?
How soon?
Yeah.
We have not planned out when it's going to be yet, so we don't have an answer for that.
Well, fuck us, I guess.
Yeah.
And fuck you too, KJHD53.
Speaking of generations of things, episode 30 was our next Console Wars podcast, where we did the 5th generation of consoles, which includes the PS1, N64, the Sega Saturn, the 3DO, a couple other weird things in there as well. And that was quite an interesting podcast. It was a bit shorter. It was our more average length of about an hour and a half. I remember this one was pretty enjoyable, but obviously when you have one console that is like the clear front runner of a generation, it does mean that the episode is going to end up a little bit shorter because there's not as much contention when it comes to comparing them.
Yeah, the 5th generation, like, now that the dust has settled and like there's nothing more. It was
kind of piss overall.
Yeah, it was. There is some phenomenal games that have come out of that era. Some games like that, I would say the 4th and 5th gen both had some pretty fundamental games for gaming. But some of these games in the 5th generation also, as Jack might say, have aged like, well, piss. Like, there's some that have, like, that were fundamental for video gaming. Yeah, you're like, your Mario, your Super Mario 64, your The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Times, your Resident Evil,
Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, and then you have stinkers like Glover and
Iggy's Wrecking Balls
and Warpath Jurassic Park. Again, I will not let that game be forgotten because it needs to be remembered because it's bad.
Thanks. But yeah, I would say this one was a fun one. We hit spoiler if you haven't ever listened to the podcast before and you're just using this to like know which episode should I listen to. I would say there's a different Console Wars episode that we did the same year, this season 2. That was, I think, a little bit more fun.
Yeah. And we have done Console Wars podcasts in the past. We covered a few in our previous season. So if you want just a quick recap, you can go to our season 1 recap for that. Or you can go ahead and find the episode and, check out the whole episode because we did have a pretty cool...
There's a couple really good ones. I don't know if we are able to do any more revisits of generations in the past.
We are running low. I think we really can only do like one more, and that's about it. And even that one's going to be a pretty quick episode because it's going to be like we're going to talk about the NES, and a little bit of the Master System, and that's it. So it's gonna be fun.
And it will be mostly Jack sitting in his black void the whole time too.
Just
because we are going to assume
Black Void.
you will not have your lights fixed months from now when we eventually get to it.
That's what I assume.
We'll see.
But the next episode that we did after that was our Gen 3 Pokemon podcast that covers the games Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire, and Leaf Green for the core series. We talked a decent amount about Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness. Those are these side series games that are not quite main series, not fully spin-off since they connect. We did talk a little bit about the spin-offs, but we tend to keep our spin-off discussions in the Pokemon episodes to a minimum because we spent an entire podcast where we started talking about the Pokemon series and we spent most of it talking about the spin-offs so we could give the main series their own episodes dedicated later on. So this was a pretty good episode, I think. I liked it just because, I'm biased, and I'm not only just biased for Pokemon, I am biased for Gen 3 of Pokemon in particular, because that is one of the best generations. This is
It was definitely the steep decline, the beginning of the steep decline for Pokemon series.
Damn.
We started here, we went up here, and now we're doing there.
and it's gonna go down from there.
There's a little bump.
There's a little bump a little bit later. We'll get to it. We are covering spoilers. We have another episode that we're going to talk about that we did later in the year, later this podcast. And as we talked about earlier, we do have plans for 2 more episodes this season. So we'll get to them. You'll hear more of our thoughts then. KJHG53 asks when we will get another Pokemon Nuzlocke stream. And
great question.
Great question.
We're putting everything on Jack this year.
Man.
There's 2 reasons for that. One, Cloud has dedicated himself to a stream series for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster.
That's my big 2025 project. It'll probably cover pretty much the whole year with a small break in between.
Yeah. And then I have 2 children.
Yeah.
So that's all you need.
That's
it's all me.
And
it's all me to stream
2 newborn children.
I can do Ace Attorney, and then sometimes I can do Dragon Quest III HD2D remake on time. And that's about it.
Yeah. So we can't expect too much from Landon, so anything that takes a lot of dedication, he's really got to be picking that one special game he gets to play a couple hours once a week.
I will say, I really would love to do what is it? A Soul Lock or whatever
Soul Link?
It is.
Yeah.
Soul Link.
That'd be so fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
I want so badly to do a Soul Link with, honestly, either one of you.
We could do it all 3 of us. You can do a 3-way Soul Link.
We could.
It would be really
would
chaotic.
Be badass.
It would be fun.
Chaotic, but I think
it'd be a ton of fun. We could do a Gen 1 Soul Link. One of us is doing
red, one of us is
red,
doing
blue, yellow. Yeah. I think that's the most fair.
Yeah.
I think because if you do I guess there's Gen 2 is somewhat fair
because you could do gold, silver, and crystal, but there are some slight differences in gameplay between those 3 as opposed to the Gen 1 games where they're basically the exact same besides which Pokemon you can get. So
yeah, someone's just locked into Pikachu.
Yeah. But that person that's locked into Pikachu can also feasibly get all 3 starters if they could end up. So they have some advantages and disadvantages. I think that'd be pretty fun. We'll have to talk about it.
It could be a thing, but we'll see. KGG53, we'll see.
The next episode we did was episode 32, which was the summer 2020.
Wow, I didn't even get to say a single word about the Gen 3 podcast.
All right. We'll back up.
His podcast.
It's my generation.
His podcast.
Sorry, Jack.
I don't know. It's okay. I didn't really have much to say, honestly. I just really like Gen 3 of Pokemon, and I thought this podcast was fun. Honestly, the reason why I look forward to the Pokemon podcast so much is because we do the tier lists for all of the Pokemon in
on Patreon.
their respective generations for the monthly Patreon video.
Ooh, shout out.
Plug. And the Pokemon tier lists are some of the most fun videos that we do, in my opinion.
They can get somewhat chaotic.
So a little bit, just a tiny bit chaotic, and it's
very
fun.
heated.
Yeah,
we have a system, so we do average things out, but like it gets. You might think that a tier list video would not be all that interesting, but we have some things to say, so it gets pretty fun.
We have individual rankings, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's what hurts us all.
So
we can move on now.
The next episode 32, is on the summer 2024 game announcements. We can't say E3 because E3 is dead. Officially, just it's gone.
True.
There's no more E3.
Yeah.
So you had Summer Game Fest, and then you also had some other events you had scattered throughout. So we pretty sure we were able to wait it out long enough to have like everything all together. Like, because Nintendo, they like to do like direct like awfully late in the month sometimes, and I think last year we had to break it up, so Nintendo Direct had to be like later on in a different podcast.
Yeah, it was.
But this year, everything we were able to just put it all together, so we were able to talk about Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, all the other the bigger third-party players that we care about. We followed enough to go over them as well. I don't remember a lot of that stuff that happened though, because it is a very topical podcast where it was a very at the time covering what was going on around then. So it honestly, it's going to be one that hasn't aged well, but we do like to cover those things because it is pretty big for us. So it was fun going over everything at the time.
I do enjoy when we get a chance to do the topical video. Obviously, it sits in a very tight bubble of right then and there, and you don't you have maybe a month of time where that episode will remain relevant. But I also feel like our little segments of what's going on with us, hopefully, can entice people to still go back if you're going back and listening to stuff. You still listen to these topical videos, and you still get a laugh. Jack sometimes says something funny.
I'm allowed to have one good joke every once in a while.
And Cloud and I are not.
Yeah,
that's all you get.
To be fair, on the topical type episodes, I'm usually not letting the comedy out. I'm just trying to go through everything. I tend to do my comedy bits in the more evergreen episodes where I can think of a joke that can go with what we're doing. So, but Jack is pretty good at spontaneously saying funny things compared to us. So.
If I was allowed to be funnier than I am, then I would be too likable,
too powerful.
We just can't have that. I need to be some level of hateable.
He has to be nerfed
to balance myself out.
Any thoughts on the 2024 game announcements, Jack?
I mean, I don't remember anything about this one specifically, but I enjoy the game announcements podcasts in general because I just like talking about what's coming up and what we're excited for and just the current state of video games outside of our usual hyper specific topics that we usually do. I like them in general, so I liked this one.
It kind of helps us keep in the back of our mind certain game companies that we don't always follow, even if we're not big fans of them. It helps us really just remember, hey, these guys exist and they have games.
A lot of games and companies and consoles even get mentioned in those podcasts that we wouldn't mention otherwise.
It's literally the summer game announcements and our year in review are the only times we might talk about certain things.
Yeah. We take ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit for that, so it's always good to have them just to spice things up. Al asks, when will Cloud do another marathon stream? And that's a good question. I have decided that if I'm going to do a marathon stream, I need to really think of I have to put more forethought into it. I did not think about the compatibility of a couple of games in the last one, and I got royally screwed over because of that. So, thankfully, I know I was able to diagnose and I was able to work around the issues. I was also given help with that. So I'll be able to work with it a little more easily, but I do need to actually think what is a series or game that I'm going to do? How can I go about doing it in a way that's entertaining and will be compatible with a marathon stream, and I'll be able to make sure everything works. So I'm not putting it off the table. I definitely want to do another one in the future. I like to do them every so often, but it depends on what really catches my eye. So, maybe in the future we'll do another marathon stream, but right now, we got the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series. So, maybe 2026 we'll do another marathon stream and I'll try to do something interesting for it.
I do feel like the Kirby series could be a good
I think
one,
it'd be a great marathon.
A lot of those are available just straight up through the Switch through NSO.
And
so you have a lot of the backlog.
Now that said,
and then even some of the other ones you can play just through an emulator.
Yeah. Stuff like the Citra emulator works really well. So you can
you got that down. You were able to test it.
Yeah,
out.
Sonic Generations 3DS ran fairly well on it. The only issue is games where if you need to use touch inputs, but there might be ways to work around that. I've been looking into alternate methods to stream 3DS games rather than use an emulator and back up my game and put it on the emulator. It does seem to be a way that you can stream the game onto the emulator through the 3DS itself, and if I can get that working, then I don't have to worry about the touch screen inputs, because then I'd actually be able to do them properly, because that was a problem in the last marathon I tried to do.
You could also use your analog pocket to play the...
Yeah, I gotta look into it, because it sounded like I actually do need the dock. But if I don't need the dock, which by the way, I have it right here. I'm gonna talk a little bit.
Spoilers.
I'm gonna talk a little bit more about it later on in the podcast.
Wow.
But yeah, moving on, the 33rd episode 33 of the podcast, which was our 8th episode of the season, was on the Super Smash Bros. Series. This one was a pretty sizable episode. It was almost 2.5 hours. It was actually over 2.5 hours when we did it live. And we talked about, Super Smash Bros. Series. We had a lot to say about pretty much everything from Melee onward. We did not talk a whole lot about the first game because there's not a whole lot to say. But we did get to go through everything, and I think it was a really fitting episode just because unless the madman decides to lie to us again and come back again, this is the Smash Brothers series as Sakurai was involved, has been involved with it, and it ended with Ultimate, which is a really fitting cap off. So got to talk about a lot of cool stuff. We got to talk about the characters we mained in each one, how we felt about the single player experience, how we experienced playing it at the time that they came out, when we first got to play them, all that good stuff. There was a lot of really just fun discussion there.
Do you think Jack's okay? Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So
sometimes I have to look at something that's not just the white screen.
You should only look at the white screen.
Blind me.
But yeah, let's some thoughts on the Super Smash Bros. Series podcast. Jack, you like the Super Smash Bros. Series.
What an
I forgot we did this podcast.
You did.
I mean, it's been a year and we do a lot of these, but I mean, I remember doing it now. I just when you said Super Smash Brothers, I'm like, oh yeah, we did do that, didn't we?
We did.
I don't remember too much about this podcast. I mean, I remember talking about, Melee and Brawl, at least, but I'm blanking, honestly.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I tried to talk as thoroughly as I could about each game, so a lot of the length was me trying to be as thorough as I could with my own personal experience with each of the games. And I think we really did a good job at like covering everything that each of the games has. Like, we were able to touch on, you know, Brawl's massive amount of content. We were able to like kind of hit on all the stuff that was in that game. We were able to talk about all the stuff that was in Smash Bros. Ultimate and Super Smash Bros. 4 for both versions, the 3DS and Wii U. We were able to really, we were pretty thorough. I don't think we really missed anything major when talking about anything. So it was a pretty good episode.
I do remember, I remember the little graph I made to signify
your opinion
the life
of the
and
games
death
in the series.
Yeah. 64 is like near the bottom of the graph, but it's not at the bottom. There's like a little bit up, and then Melee is like a third of the way up the page, and then Brawl was at the very tippy top, and then 3DS was like 2/3 of the way down. Wii U was like a half step down from that, and then I had labeled Ultimate under the page. It was like off screen.
This man does not play Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
I actually played it after we had done that podcast because there was a work event and they were like, bring Smash Brothers, Landon. You should bring your Switch and your copy of Smash Brothers. And I was like, I don't have all the characters unlocked. I hope you people are okay with that. And they're like, we don't care.
Perfect.
Did they unlock some characters for you?
I think we unlocked like one or two more characters.
Hell yeah.
We're getting there.
So it's unfortunate. I'm still nowhere near close to having the full roster, though.
All right.
I mean, the podcast was fun. I definitely did not contribute as much as I would on a topic I hold absolutely near and dear to my heart. This is like Zelda is for me, where I just kind of like pitched in. It's probably worse.
It's probably
even worse. I mean,
fair.
I did grow up playing a fuck ton of Brawl. I played a decent amount of Melee. I did enjoy, especially Smash 4 3DS when Jack and I would play it, and by that I mean he would just relentlessly beat me in 2-stock in like online matches while I had to sit like right next to my router at the time because
yeah, the old 3DS
because where
the Wi-Fi was fucked on it.
Fucking awful.
Remember when I used Charizard and I tried to do Flare Blitz and Justin managed to do Luigi's up B?
The nose.
And he nosed me in my Flare Blitz animation. I'll never forget that. I can't believe that works.
Some wild shit. There's some wild fucking shit out there. But yeah, it's a good episode.
Shout out to the old recordings of us playing Smash for Wii U together.
Those are still up. If you want to
hear crunchy bad audio while we play Smash Brothers for Wii U.
If you want to rip your eyeballs and ear bowls out.
The video quality is okay.
The video is
just
fine.
Our audio quality is really bad because pretty sure we were still using Pamela, weren't we?
That was definitely Pamela.
You have to look at Smash Brothers. Like, it doesn't matter what the video quality is.
Oh, okay.
Fair.
I see.
But speaking of the Wii U, the next episode was on the Wii U. It was the big episode. We called it Much Ado About Wii U, and we went over the Wii U in its entirety, from how it was treated through its lifespan. The launch lineup, the features of the gamepad and the system itself, and there's all sorts of cool stuff.
Inception to death.
So, thoughts about the Wii U episode? That one was a pretty fun one. I liked it. I think it was pretty interesting.
I
remember the Workers International Industrial Union.
Yeah, because you had done the Wii
so
U
like
as one.
I have this thing where like even though the Wii U technically when you type out the name of the system, it is Wii space U. I always put it Wii U together because of how they do like the box art where the U is right next to the word Wii. So like that's just how I stylize Wii U. But that's not how it technically is. And Landon looked up Wii U all together as one word, and that's apparently a thing that stands for that. So
the Workers International Industrial Union, baby.
Hell yeah.
Learn some history, bitches. No, I love our system deep dives when we get a chance to do them. There's not a whole lot of systems out there I feel like all three of us can really dig our heels into.
It's mostly Nintendo stuff, and we have covered a lot of Nintendo stuff. We got to try and do some non-Nintendo stuff one of these days, but there's only a few.
One day one of us will play a system.
We could do the PS3 retrospective at some point, I think.
Oh yeah,
PS3.
I feel like all of us had a pretty good
we had a decent amount of time. I think PS3 and PS4, because at this point, even if Sony won't kill it, the PS4's... We're far enough out on the PS4 life cycle.
The PS4 is my Blu-ray player at this point. I have not used it for anything but streaming and watching movies in years.
My PS4 is a paperweight.
Except to play Uncharted 4 for the Twitch. Twitch.com.
Twitch.yeah.
Twitch.yeah.
Yeah, I don't even own my PS4 anymore because when I got my PS5, I was like, I literally do not need this launch model PS4.
Yeah. I still have my launch. Well, technically it's not a launch model. It was. Mine was the. What was it? Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto 5 bundled from the. Yeah, that was
like
mine.
the year after. Yeah, but it was like it's still the same model. Yeah. And there wasn't much of a change between them. But yes, I digress. The Wii U episode.
Yes, Wii U episode.
I do remember this one.
Okay.
It was a fun episode. The Wii U had a troubled history.
I enjoyed this episode for one reason, and that is because I put myself into a role that episode. I was the person on the axis of shedding negative opinions into it because I knew Landon was going to talk about it more positively, and I felt like Jack was probably going to be the neutral guy, and usually I'm the neutral guy, so it was really fun for me to be like, I'm going to be the hater this episode. I mean, I don't hate the Wii.
It's so rare.
I don't hate the Wii U, but I got to play the role, and it was refreshing to be like a different role when discussing a system or discussing anything.
Who's normally the hater?
Cloud should be the norm. I mean, you.
What?
Most of the time, yeah, Landon is usually the hater.
What? I don't hate anything.
Landon, you are if any one of us is the hater of the three, it's
Landon
you.
is the ultimate hater.
For most things.
Nah.
Even if it's just a bit.
Who knows if it's really a bit.
So it was really interesting having
the world
those
may
roles
never know.
flipped around a bunch. So good episode if you wanted to hear us talk from a different axis. And we covered everything we could.
Does feel like wow, being called out on stream.
Jack, do you have anything to add about the Wii U episode?
Nah, not really. It was fun though. I liked it.
Try and move through this a little bit faster so we can do a quick break. But visual presentation in games, episode 35. So this was our 10th episode of the season. This covered basically not just graphics, but art style, user interface elements, just the whole package of how they will take a game visually and just put it together to give the overall atmosphere and vibes that a game might have. So this episode, it was much shorter because it's kind of hard to really pin down points to talk about, but I think we were able to discuss a decent range of things that go into visual presentation, So it was a pretty nice episode. It was a refreshingly short one for people that are used to our longer winded episodes.
God, I love short episodes. All right,
long pause.
Anything to add, Jack?
No, honestly, I thought the pause to like just pad time to the podcast was funnier than any bit that I was going to come up with.
The next episode was actually one of my favorites that we did this season, the 2011 year in review. So there's a lot of years in gaming that we didn't get to talk about yet, and we didn't even talk about any previous years in gaming when we were doing our regular YouTube thing. We were just doing the years as we were going along. And 2011, we didn't start doing it yet, even though we had started our channel like right at the end of 2011. So we started doing, at least with this episode, we started doing previous years. So we were able to go back and kind of just give a nostalgic look at the stuff that came out in 2011 and like talk about what we enjoyed from that year. And it was really cool to be reminded of a lot of the games that came out. This was unexpectedly a pretty good year when I remember it.
2011 was such a fucking solid year for video games. And I mean, it ties into the next podcast, which was very much something we wanted to do. We wanted to go from 2011 year in review.
The next topic we're going to talk about,
because
they're very closely tied together.
They are hand in hand. But 2011 had a ton of great games, and I know we have done a bunch like through the YouTube version of our channel, but I still think revisiting some of those years that we did now, like, you know, 10
I think
plus
I think it'll be good
is still worth it.
I definitely want to get back to more of the years we didn't get to cover yet at all, because like 2010 is going to be really interesting. A couple of the other like ones like the 2000s will be pretty interesting. But like you did say, it will be fun to go back, and there are a couple years that we covered, but we were still amateurs, so we didn't do the best job. So revisiting those to give a more thorough scope will be really cool when we get around to redoing them.
And a lot of those were just top 10, like, or top 5 videos, like, what's our top 5 video games that we played this year?
Yeah.
Versus like a full scope.
We
like,
talk about
let's
all of the
deep dive
biggest
into,
stuff that came out, not just what we played.
And then sort of like digest into that. So that's why I liked revisiting this, because it was like cool. We get to like revisit a year that is big for us both, like as a group channel, and then also like for gaming, and in a format that like really like lets us like dig into it. So
Jack,
good episode. I agree with it being probably one of the best of the season.
Jack, anything to add?
2011 was a good year. I don't know. You guys basically said everything.
Sorry, I'll shut up and let you.
I was gonna say we're gonna switch it up.
Okay.
We're gonna have you talk first about this next one, which is gonna be interesting because you got yours, I think, after we did. But the episode 37, this will be the last one we talk about before we do a quick break. But this was tied into the 2011 year in review. They were hand in hand, a pair. The Nintendo 3DS episode. We subtitled this "Now It's Personal," and we covered pretty much like everything you could think about with the 3DS. We covered its launch lineup, how the library evolved, just like with the Wii U. We talked about the features and like the updates that it got to add more features. We talked about the different revisions and our favorite ones, our experiences with all of those. So we're all three of us are really big 3DS users, so we had quite a bit to say. So like it was a 2-hour episode, so it was fairly decently length for something that was just talking about one specific thing. And we had a lot to share.
I'm going to correct you on one thing you said. You said I was probably the last to get one. I think I was actually the first of the three of us to get a 3DS.
That
because
might sound right,
if I'm not mistaken, Lennon, you got yours for your birthday.
I did.
I also got mine for my birthday. And
A whole
my birthday
day ahead.
is
One whole day.
the day before Landon's. And I know you said you got yours like right before.
So I got mine the week
price drop.
before the
program
price
ended.
drop was supposed to be like widespread because Walmart did it a week early. So I got it.
Damn.
Like, it was in August, I think, like early August.
So you got it for the sale price, and you
I
still got the Ambassador games. That's pretty badass,
That's
actually.
fucked up. He owes me $20.
He owes you... What was the price drop?
It was
like
$80. It went down from $250 to $170.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3DS sales early on were not great.
So...
but no, it was a fun discussion. The 3DS, like Cloud said, is a system that we all have like a ton of experience with, and also we've all actually really like. It was a system that we pretty much all saw the start to the end of, and almost all of that was documented through YouTube. I mean, we started Gaming Stooges at the end. I say we, I didn't join until 2 years after, but Gaming Stooges started at the end of 2011. So that's, like 9 months after the 3DS came out, but still, like, pretty much anything that onward was like, the full 3DS experience. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, basically, it was a retrospective for a console that we were all mostly, well, I guess I wasn't an adult quite yet, but we were all like mostly adults for, and like got to purchase and play a lot of the system's best games.
We were old enough to have really thorough, well-informed opinions on the system. It wasn't something that we played as kids and didn't really have like, critical analysis kick in for us. Like, we had that. We were able to really talk.
I mean, I was technically still a kid.
Yeah, but you were 16, so like that's pretty far into your teenage years. You should have had. You mean to tell me you couldn't critically analyze something at the age of 16?
I mean, I absolutely could. I was still a dumbass kid though, and had extreme biases in certain franchises.
Just like Landon today.
But
what? I don't have bias.
Not just bias, extreme bias.
Oh.
I have that.
I have that.
Yeah.
In space.
It's coming back around again.
Oh my god. This is for the people of the sun.
The people of the sun.
All right. So this is a good time to take a quick break. So if anybody that is not me wants to get up and do their own thing, I will talk about what we've been up to lately. You can find us on a bunch of different platforms. We've got Twitch here, where this is going live. We've got YouTube at youtube.com/GamingStooges. We export all of our VODs and high quality versions, audio versions of these episodes, as well as all of our streams. They go out to YouTube after as well. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/GamingStooges, where we have a bunch of different exclusive content. Jack ended up talking about our series on Pokemon generation tier lists that we do. We've got a bunch of other cool stuff. We've got Delta Green campaigns. We've got some alignment charts with like tax alignment charts, like which characters would follow the tax code and why. We've got some other interesting like one-offs as well. So if you ever want to give that a shot, that's our Gold Stooge tier. And you also get a special shout out. Of course, we have Pixel Vixen once again, as always, at our Gold Stooge tier. But even if you're a Silver Stooge, you can still vote in polls to help us decide the direction of the podcast and help us decide streams. So we give you guys a bit of control over where the podcast and the streams go from there. So if you ever want to jump in on that, that is $3 if you want to do that. We have an RSS, which that controls our Spotify, Apple Music podcasts, whatever they call that, Amazon as well. So if you ever want to hear this on multiple different platforms, we are on a lot of them. And I occasionally check whether we get new ones added support through the RSS, although nothing too major has come up lately. But if there's ever another major podcast outlet and RSS supports it, you might see us on that outlet next. On Twitch right now, we just finished the Final Fantasy II Pixel remaster that I was doing. We are still going through Apollo Justice Ace Attorney Dual Destinies with Jack.
It's Phoenix
Wright.
Technically Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies, despite it being the Apollo trilogy. You would think, but no.
They canned Apollo after his first game.
They canned him and made him Toilet Boy.
Yeah, oh my god. I will say, the current case we're playing, I hate it. I fucking hate one character, and that drives the entire opinion of the whole case down to the ground for me.
It's kind of a dumb and drawn out case to begin with, honestly. Even without that particular character.
How many times do we have to hear the phrase,
the end justifies the means?
I will stab my ears out. But
it's almost like we're in the dark age of the law.
We are having a ton of fun with these characters, and like what we've done to Apollo. R.I.P. Apollo, but he is the toilet boy.
And then
he cleans toilets.
So we did, Final Fantasy II Pixel Remaster just finished up. That was pretty fun. Landon, you are just about to end the Dragon Quest 3 HD2D remake main story.
I should be done with it
by the time this goes out to other platforms.
This week that we're airing. So yeah, by the time this goes out to other platforms, I will have finished it. And I will either be doing a break week that week, or I will do like a one-off weird stream. And then by that time, I'll decide if I want to continue playing Dragon Quest games, take a break from streaming altogether, or the visual bits that audio listeners don't forget.
So speaking of audio-visual bits,
decide on something else.
KJHG53 asks, what is the best product you do fake ads for?
I'm so glad you asked, KJHG53. That's such a great question. You know, we have such great ones. Taco Bell, Mike's Hard Lemonade, cold, hard, refreshing, Mike's Hard. I'm sure we did, what was it, Long John Silver's there for a bit for Great Ace Attorney. Go watch the Great Ace Attorney VODs. The Great Ace Attorney VODs. Jack, is there one that tops, though, the following product?
Well, according to Al in the chat, he says, I think Tillamook is the only thing you guys have fake advertised that I have tried. So I would say that's our best one.
I think it's it. We don't get paid by them, but hey, here we are. I'm eating the same container of Tillamook that I've had for probably 2 months now.
How is it not freeze-dried yet?
I don't know.
Still looks
so
fine,
good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good enough. Right. Good enough for Landon, but it has to melt a little
All right.
bit.
Let's...
I will say, though, real quick, I know I'm hogging the spotlight, but I'm very excited to try the following product. It is
spicy Jack cheese.
Colby Jack cheese.
Why would you show me what I can't have?
That's good.
That's the entire point of this segment.
They don't have sliced Tillamook.
I'm so mad
here.
they stopped carrying the sliced Tillamook at my local grocery store. I hate it.
This is the fucking shit that I can be like, hey guys, guess what? And you know what? I'm going to be able to go to Tillamook the very first week of April.
Nice.
Going to the
Godspeed.
homeland.
All right.
So I'm going to go put this back in the fridge.
Let's move on. We next talked about on episode 38 canceled games. So this is basically games that were rumored or were factually known to were supposed to exist and then just didn't because development hell is a thing. We got to talk about stuff like Pokemon Z, which they are taking ideas from for Pokemon Legends ZA, so that'll be great to see what they're doing with that. But you had Sonic Extreme, that was supposed to be a game for the Saturn, never happened, so we got to talk about that. And there was just a bunch of little things scattered around where we got to talk about, hey, well, here's this cool thing that we know was supposed to exist and didn't. So it was a pretty fun, cute little episode. I don't remember. Yeah, it was only an hour and a half. I don't remember it super well because we kind of flew through it. We had quite a few different games we talked about that, well, quite a few non-games, I should say, since they don't exist.
We talked about Scalebound.
talked about Scalebound.
That Platinum Games game Xbox Microsoft decided to fucking can.
Every time I remember that, it always hurts because it's like we're not Xbox guys, but I want Xbox to have good games so that like there's like an incentive for all three of the big three to be like, have a bunch of people excited for them. And like this one big game Microsoft could have had, they were just like, nah, let's can it.
I think they reused parts of it for like Bayonetta 3.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's usually when a game is canceled, they'll try to take some assets and they'll try to use it. Like, as I had talked about in that episode, there was stuff that was supposed to be in Pokemon Z, and they took it and put it into Pokemon Sun and Moon. So, like, some of these canceled games, they don't always end up fully canceled. They usually try to use what they made in some respects, but it's still always a shame that we don't get the package as we were expecting to get. But yeah, this is a cute little episode. Any other thoughts on it?
I love short episodes.
Yeah. I know you do.
Yeah.
This one was pretty fun. I was like surprised. It was an episode that we had more to talk about than I expected to, honestly.
Yeah, like that episode could have been as short as like just over an hour, and somehow we managed to get an extra half hour out of it. Not including the fact that we also usually do our, catch up segments at the end. So, but yeah. The episodes, so the next two episodes, I'm just going to kind of lump them together. Episodes 39 and 40, we did 2D Mario games. So episode 39 was part 1, episode 40 was part 2. We split it into 2 because both of those ended up being roughly 2 hours long. So we managed to talk about 2D Mario games for a combined 4 hours, minus some time spent on the catch-up segment that I think we did for one of the episodes. We didn't do it for both, I don't believe. So it was, we talked about a lot about 2D Mario. I can't remember where we left off at the end of the first part. I believe, was it after Super Mario Land 2-6 Golden Coins? And then we started with Super Mario 3D, or Super Mario DS, New Super Mario Brothers in part 2. I can't remember the exact.
Let me see if I can find the comment.
But yeah, we covered a lot. We covered all the 2D Mario games, and we were able to talk more about Super Mario Brothers Wonder, of course, which we streamed before. We enjoyed that. We were able to kind of like go quickly over what our favorites of the series are. I do remember replaying a couple of these to like brush up on my experience with the games. So it was a pretty fun couple episodes. I remember I edited one of the 2 episodes. I don't remember which one. Landon and I had kind of split up the work duties on this one, I believe. So
it was a big one. So yeah. I thought we got further into the main series in the original.
I think you might be right. I think I might be underestimating it because I think we spent a bit of... no, you're definitely right, because I believe we spent a lot more time in the second half talking about others. Like, so like we had like side 2D games that we had clumped together. So we like not exactly Mario, 2D Mario, but like Donkey Kong 94 and like, stuff adjacent to that. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. So like we like had a bunch of like stuff like that we talked about in part 2. So the bulk of like the main 2D Mario games were in part 1. But
yeah, it was like, I think we actually talked all the way up to Super Mario Run maybe in the first part. And then we moved both of the makers into the second part.
Yeah.
It was like something like that.
It was like Super Mario Maker 2.
1 and 2, and then
Mario
Wonder.
And then all the side stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, this was fun. We don't actually get to talk about Mario dedicated a whole lot. So it was fun to actually have an episode or two that was just dedicated entirely to talking about something Mario related that wasn't like one of the side series like Mario Kart. Yeah. So I liked it. I liked them, I should say. There was 2 episodes.
Yeah. It's a good series, like for the 2 episodes.
Jack, how do you feel about the Mario podcast, 2D Mario?
I like Mario.
That's so much. That's so much sketchier with like your dark room around you. Just like
that's the idea.
Like if you like.
I like Mario.
Gross.
KJHG. Oh, you had more to share?
It was a good podcast. We talked about the Mario games.
We have differing opinions on what our favorite 2D games are. So it's pretty interesting to share, like, compare how we felt about, like, we universally all love Mario Wonder, but like, you know, Landon has more praise for stuff like Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins. Jack is more of a big fan of Mario World than the two of us. I'm a bit higher on a game or two here or there. Like, I'm probably like weirdly the biggest fan of New Super Mario Bros. DS. I don't know why I like that game so much. I just do.
That game sucks
Landon
so
really
much. I don't have bias. I don't know what you're talking about.
You have extreme bias.
So it's fun to see when our opinions differ, and that was a couple episodes that we got to do that. KJH250.
Answer your.
Yes.
I was just gonna go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say what you're gonna say.
Then go ahead, do it. I want you to do it.
KJHG53 asks, will you do a 3D Mario episode? Yeah, sure, why not? It's only 6 games.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Five games.
Not that big of
it's
a...
Mario 60, yeah, Mario 64,
many.
Sunshine, Galaxy, 3D Land, 3D World, Odyssey.
Oh, I guess I forgot about
Galaxy 2.
See,
did you get that
Galaxy
one?
2.
I was just thinking
7.
the main 3D games like 64, Sunshine, Galaxy 1 and 2, and then Odyssey. But we could talk about 3D Land and World too.
3D Land and
Bowser's
World.
Fury. Actually, you know what? Yeah, there's plenty to talk about in that podcast. Fuck
3D
it.
Land and 3D World are either their own podcast because they're like a hybrid of the two, 2D and 3D, or you just lump them in the 3D because they're.
I would rather lump them into the 3D because I don't know how we would have a whole hour to talk about those 2 games.
Listen.
Plus we would have to talk about Bowser's Fury in the regular 3D segment, but leave 3D World for its own podcast, so we'll just put them all in one.
Listen, I can do a 3D World podcast because guess what? We get to talk about Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker at that point because you know what? It was a spin-off from that.
It's true.
I can
Maybe
talk
we'll
about...
include Captain Toad in the 3D Mario podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it counts, sort of. I mean, if we talked about now you have the experience to say this. We talked about Super Princess Peach in the 2D Mario podcast. Would we be talking about Princess Peach Showtime in the 3D Mario podcast? Would we talk about the Luigi's Mansion games?
So
now we're getting into the spicy stuff.
That would be a full conversation that we'd have to have. But here's the thing. Platformer. True. We were very specific about games that are platformers when we were talking about the spin-offs for that.
True.
Captain Toad is a platformer. Not Super Princess Peach.
Princess Peach Showtime.
Princess Peach Showtime is kind of a platformer.
Luigi's Mansion is
not a platformer.
Not a platformer.
No.
True.
So it's that level degree is like Captain Toad is yes. Even though it fundamentally changes like platformer because it's like you can't jump.
It's a puzzle platformer.
But it's a puzzle platformer.
Exactly. And
then it just kind of goes down from there.
Yeah.
But
it's like your Toki Tories of the world, but in 3D. So it's similar enough. Episode 41 was an episode on our preferred genres of video games, which is interesting that it took us 40 episodes to get to a podcast where we talked about which genres of games we like the most. But this was our chance to just kind of talk about various video game genres that don't always get a slot to talk about them in other episodes. We brought up a lot of different genres too. We were able to, I was able to bring up shoot 'em ups. We don't really get to talk about those a whole lot because, when would we have the chance to talk about those? So
when you have a shoot 'em up episode.
True. So I was able to bring those up. Jack brought up a couple different interesting genres I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know. Landon also, we all obviously talked about our platformers and RPGs because those are the two big ones for all of us. But after that, we were able to open things up quite a bit. So it was a pretty fun episode. It was also not super long, a little under 2 hours, about an hour and 45 minutes. So yeah, we were able to spend a decent amount of time talking about it. Jack, do you remember the genres that you mentioned in the episode from you?
I definitely brought up rhythm games and Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk.
I'm pretty sure I tried to specifically define what
extreme
kind of
sports games.
Extreme sports, yeah. I think sports games in general can be fun, and I do enjoy sports games, so I think that would be another one. I think those are the ones that I specifically brought up. As for obviously, I could just recap the podcast.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I don't know. I like platformers and action-adventure games and action games and fucking RPGs and what have you.
Yeah.
I like... Yeah, that's about it.
Landon got up, so
we have to stall for time.
We could just move on.
We could move
he
on.
Does,
yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't care a whole lot about preferred genres episode. Because the next episode was actually one of probably one of my favorites of the season as well, was Console Wars 4th generation. So you had the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, the PC Engine / TurboGrafx 16, whatever you want to call it, the Neo Geo, and on the handheld front you had Game Boy, Game Gear. So you had quite a lot of interesting systems at the time, and that's not even everything, but that's the major stuff. And it's the Super Nintendo versus the Genesis generation. This was the big first console war that ever happened. So we were able to talk quite a bit about this. This was an almost 2-hour episode as well. And just reliving just all of the cool games that I played as a kid on both of these systems was a whole lot of fun. I know that Jack's a little bit younger, a few years younger, so he doesn't. A lot of your experiences in retrospect.
This generation was very much before my time. Outside of a few key games from when I was a child, I did not have a whole lot of first-hand experience with this generation. But I do remember the podcast being fun. Talking about the variety of games that came out on each system during this generation was fun. We brought up a lot of shit that would not have been ever brought up otherwise.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I definitely enjoyed it too. For me, it's weird. So this was during a time when, because I was poor and I was a kid, a lot of my experience happened on this generation happened during the next generation, but I didn't get into that next generation until a little bit later. So I kind of had a lot of my experience in a very small amount of time while another generation was happening. But I was able to get a decent amount of experience as a whole. Landon is not here, but I know that he enjoyed this generation as well. He was able to talk about a lot of Super Nintendo some Genesis. He was able to talk quite a bit about Game Gear being like a more retrospective thing, where like he was able to talk about a lot of Game Gear stuff that he's been playing since collecting for the system. I think this is really like one of those generations where a lot of the experience comes in retrospect, because a lot of us were playing games long after the generation was relevant, but it was still a lot of fun to just talk about this generation as a whole anyway. The next episode was Generation 4 of Pokemon, episode 43, that covers Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. You also had Pokemon Battle Revolution was a side game that connected with those. This was yet another generation that I think highly of, and I know Jack thinks pretty highly of as well, despite, maybe not quite as much as Gen 3, but still pretty decent generation.
Oh, don't worry. Definitely not as much as Gen 3.
Definitely not as much.
But I do love Gen 4, make no mistake.
Yes. Landon, did you have any thoughts on the Console Wars episode, by the way? Or the Preferred Genres episode?
Preferred Genres episode was fine. I like the open discussion podcasts because they're usually short, and I love short episodes. But we do also I feel like sometimes we have fun conversations, even when they're not as scripted. And by scripted, I mean we just have like
a conversation.
Yeah, that was a much less
having a
scripted episode. We really just kind of just talked.
But the Console Wars and Pokemon Gen 4, I think were another pair of really good episodes. Obviously, this is still when Pokemon was decent in some fashion, so we had some good Pokemon content to talk about, and then
we had Heart Gold and Soul Silver. That's the important thing.
I will say the tier lists once we get to the later generations are going to get interesting.
Yeah,
we had some interesting. We had a pretty fun time with the Patreon exclusive, the Generation 4 Pokemon tier list. I think honestly that was one of my favorites yet. Like the Generation 1 was it was Gen 1. We had our favorites. It was pretty concrete. Johto was pretty cool. Generation 3 was interesting, but we had some very interesting very off the wall conversations during that episode for the Gen 4 one, I feel. So join the Gold Stooge tier, or you can we'll have eventually we'll do like a package thing where you can just buy those episodes outright. Either way, gotta experience those tier lists. They're pretty fun.
I give the Gen 4 podcast an S+.
Ooh.
You know what?
Spicy.
I can also give it an S+. I had it upside down. Landon
give it a
Tillamook yum. That's a yum tier. That's
a sheet of stickers from Tillamook.
But yeah,
lucky bastard.
Generation 4 was a great generation, so that was fun talking about that. The next episode was Jack's favorite episode, episode 44. Say the line, Jack.
No. It hasn't aged the best.
Yay!
Arguably the internet's least favorite episode of the Gaming Stooges Talks podcast.
Wow.
Apparently.
Yeah, unfortunately. It
rude as fuck, whoever disliked it on YouTube.
It's
fuck you.
It's funny. It actually was one of our best performing as far as views go. Like, we had a lot of people check that one out. Both the VOD and the high quality audio episode. So I think it's probably just that one of us said that a game hasn't aged well, that they didn't like us saying hasn't aged well.
Somehow I doubt that whoever disliked the video actually listened to the whole thing.
Probably not. They probably heard something they didn't agree with, disliked the video, and then clicked off. But I think that we were able to really add nuance to it, though, especially for quite a few games that we talked about. We didn't just say, oh, this game hasn't aged all that well and it's poopy diapers dog shit. Like, we were able to say, hey, these games have some aspects about it that aren't great, but if you can put yourself in the mindset, they're still enjoyable. And I think we were able to really differentiate that, like, just because a game hasn't aged well doesn't mean it's not fun. It's just that there's aspects of games that you have to really kind of put a little more effort in to kind of get the most out of them compared to back in the day. But it was a pretty good episode, I thought. Was decent, our standard length, just about a little under 2 hours. So we've managed to talk about a lot.
The other top podcast, and it's from season 2, was Our Preferred Genres. Those were the two most viewed podcast episodes.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So people wanted to get to know us a little bit better then, I guess.
And then it goes, hasn't aged the best, VOD, preferred games VOD, hasn't aged the best, audio edit, 3DS, Pokemon Gen 4, Console Wars Gen 4.
Nice.
Those are our top 5 episodes. And that's, I'm also including everything from season 1 too. So season 1 kind of sucked. Don't go back and listen to any of that.
Fuck that shit.
I mean, our podcast
season
4, season 3, baby.
Means...
Season 4 will be a remake of season 1, and then we'll just recycle all the content.
Oh God, no. But if our podcast is catching on now in season 2, like we're going places. So, thank you for everybody that's tuned into those episodes. We really appreciate it. Even if you don't always agree with what we have to say, just having that dialogue is always nice. So. The next episode we did was episode 45, the sweet spot of difficulty. This concerned how difficult or easy games are, the balance of that. Sometimes the games can be sporadic, sometimes they are more linear, sometimes it's a flat difficulty. It was really interesting to talk about how dynamic the difficulty might be for certain games. How games might address their difficulty with like settings to tweak that can make a game easier or harder. We got to really go into quite a bit. Like, this was an almost 2-hour episode, so we really covered all of our bases, talked about how, it's not just, game hard, game easy. Like, it's definitely way more complex than that. And it was fun to really just go over all that.
I kind of remember liking this one because it was like open discussion for the most part.
It was another open discussion one.
I generally enjoy those podcasts.
I know we have been talking a lot about it a bit more, especially as Cloud has been doing the Pixel Remaster games, and I've been playing Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake on Twitch.yeah.
Twitch.yeah.
I don't think we can plug that.
No, we cannot.
I did it anyway. Oops. And like the idea of being able to turn on or off or up or down, like increase the amount of like random encounters, gold, experience that you can get in RPGs is such a good thing that a lot of games just sleep on, I feel like. Thank you, Al for pinning Twitch.yeah/GamingStooges.
Epic. That's amazing.
We should buy the Twitch.yeah/GamingStooges domain, and it just links to the Great Ace Attorney VODs.
Yeah. And you know what would be best is if it wasn't even the Twitch site, it was the YouTube playlist.
It would have to be the YouTube playlist. They don't exist on Twitch anymore.
True.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on the sweet spot of difficulty, Jack?
Nah.
The next episode we did, episode 46, was our Sonic review double feature. We had Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, the game, and the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie. We reviewed both of those back to back. That was a pretty big episode, a little over 2.5 hours, about 2 hours and 45 minutes. So that was a lot. We talked quite a lot about both of those things. Almost said games. They are not both games.
The Year of Shadow the Hedgehog.
It was the Year of Shadow.
It was a good Sonic year.
It was a good Sonic
It
year.
really was.
And if there's one thing this channel is built on, it is Sonic. Sonic's dead corpse.
Hey, the last time that there was a Sonic game that was as acclaimed as Shadow Generations, we made GamingStooges like a month later.
It's true.
So
it wasn't because
I don't know
of
about that.
Generations.
We got it.
It wasn't because of, no, I'm not saying it was because of Generations. It's completely coincidental.
No.
I'm just saying.
I think we're totally forgetting about Sonic Mania.
I mean, yeah.
Like that was kind of a big deal. So like, I don't know.
I guess I'm thinking mostly 3D games.
Yeah. But
so then just revise your statement to say the last critically acclaimed 3D Sonic game.
The last critically acclaimed 3D Sonic game.
So
there.
It was.
Is that fine now?
I forgot about Mania. I'm sorry.
That's like your favorite, I don't know, 8th game? I don't know.
favorite 8th game.
Favorite 8th game. Man, when it's the 8th game, it's my favorite.
It really is. But Sonic is in the lifeblood of this group. It is part of the reason all of us
do content.
know each other.
No, it is true.
It is part of the reason why the channel was even, designed after we've all met, is just to do commentary on Sonic games, specifically Sonic 06.
Shout out to childhood Sonic autism for bringing this friendship together.
Yeah.
And it a good year in Sonic is always good, and we had a pretty good movie and a pretty good game.
I'm hoping that will. I don't remember if it came out that year. I don't think it did. I think it came out the previous year. But Sonic Dream Team was also a big thing because they added Shadow and other stuff to that. I'm really hoping that we get a release for Dream Team on Switch. I know Apple Arcade likes to lock shit behind it for a while, and that is always a shame, but I feel like Sonic Dream Team is one of those games that should be able to escape it and get released elsewhere. So,
unfortunately, Apple is stupidly protective of their IPs, and they hate physical media, so I'm not expecting it anytime soon.
Even then, when we get it, it's probably just going to be a digital release elsewhere, because there's quite a few games that are on Apple Arcade that get released outside of Apple Arcade, but they hardly get physical releases, and it's usually they don't come out till at least a year later, sometimes more. Like Hello Kitty Island Adventure finally came out on the Switch recently, so that exists on something that's not Apple Arcade, so hopefully Dream Team follows. Al asks Forces Redux when. For the listeners and for those of you who haven't seen it, there was a Forces stream series of 2 streams recently, and he's already asking for us to redux it.
I think I was asking for a redux in the middle of the series.
It won't be me.
Jack played through it.
That's all I'm saying.
Jack was the one that originally did it. It's one of his favorite games now.
This game fucking is awesome. I love this game so much.
We should do
it's my favorite Sonic game.
We should just do a Sonic Forces episode.
It totally
does. It's my favorite.
It totally deserves the poor attempt at recreating the box art slip, because that is not actually
so good. I'm glad.
It's amazing.
I'm glad I got that.
I'm glad it came this way, honestly. It's what this game deserves.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, the Sonic review double feature. We really enjoyed the movie. We really enjoyed the game. So it was a lot of fun talking about that. Episode 47 was our aftermarket hardware episode. This is when we got to talk a lot about the interesting world of hardware, mostly consoles, but some peripherals as well, that is supported by not the original makers of that thing. So if you had
sometimes
because
we also talked about
we did talk about the companies that redid theirs as well, and actually that's how we opened it. But there's old games have support, and say these companies like to cash in, and I am a sucker, so I bought a thing like that. I didn't actually have this analog pocket that I'm holding in my hand at the time of the episode. Honestly, the talking about it in that episode was kind of like the real like driver. I had to get an analog pocket. So thanks, Gaming Stooges Talks Podcast. You made me buy an analog pocket.
We did it, capitalism.
You're welcome.
I think Jack was like away from the camera when we were actually talking about that. Also, sad fact, Cloud destroyed the video version of this episode.
He did.
He destroyed it maliciously.
Unfortunately.
It was really unfortunate. I had recorded it and I had somehow deleted it when I was moving all my files over when I was resetting my laptop because I was having issues with it. And somehow I didn't recover. It's so we don't have a video version of this episode. It was an episode we actually did not do live. We recorded this offline in order to have it out because as Landon mentioned, he has kids now, and it turned out they were due right around when this ended up coming out. So
yeah,
but it was a good episode.
They were born 2 days before the audio release of Sonic Cross Shadow Generations.
Yeah.
But that one we had time to record in the typical format because we didn't know. And then shit happened a week later.
Yep.
Yeah. Aftermarket Hardware, good ep. I do also want to get an analog pocket because we've been talking about it a lot. I did a lot of looking at it. We have some folks in our Discord that have them. Still waiting for switch to information.
We're really excited for when Jack sends an analog pocket to Landon.
Yes, I have been waiting. So Jack said he bought me one and it is shipping. I'm just waiting for it to show up. So I know Jack would never lie. I know it's a lot of money, but I'm so thankful that he purchased.
He's such a good friend.
It'll be here any day now.
Yeah, any day now.
any day now.
Yeah, I'm willing to wait. So
it'll be worth the wait.
Yeah, maybe I'll have two. Maybe I'll order another one just so you know. I can link cable trade with myself with Pokemon games, just in case. So, but I'm sure the one Jack definitely ordered for me will show up any day now.
But any other thoughts on Aftermarket Hardware, Jack?
This was a surprisingly fun episode. I remember it's pretty fresh in my memory because it was only a couple months ago. But
let's talk about the NES Classic, the Sega Genesis Mini,
the Super Nintendo Classic. How bad the PS1 Classic is.
Yeah, got to talk about shit on our podcast sometimes.
I won't lie. Sometimes Cloud just tells us this is the episode idea, and I think both Jack and I just go, how are we turning that into at least an hour and a half long discussion?
And then we do
honestly, there are definitely a few podcasts last year where I'm like, how in the fuck are we going to talk about this topic for an hour and a half? And then it just ends up magically happening.
You gotta trust the process.
Obviously, we don't push back enough to where, we don't do, it's very rarely that we just end up going, absolutely not to an idea.
And I ask them, I give options, I present things, I'm like, this is what we could do.
Yeah.
What would you guys like to do? And then, we come to a decision, and
all of the podcast ideas that we have are all, approved by the three of us. There's nothing that we've done where at least one of us was like, hey, maybe this is a bad idea. Actually, I don't want to do this one.
Now in the background, still two of the three of us might go, what the fuck are we thinking trying to do this?
Yeah.
But
sometimes there's an episode where even I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And then we do it anyway. But this was a good episode. This was a very good episode, despite it being something you wouldn't have thought would last for 2 hours. But we managed to talk quite a lot about it. Thanks, Nintendo and Sega and Sony. That was definitely helpful. The next episode that we did, we're actually getting near the end now, is episode 48, was our 2024 year in review.
Good episode.
It was a good episode. It was a big one. It was actually, no, it wasn't even that big. It was a little over almost 2 hours and a quarter. It was pretty thorough analysis though of all the major stuff that happened last year, games, some interesting events that happened, just a lot of stuff. I managed to miss quite a few things. Landon managed to pitch in quite a few things, although, to be fair, this was probably our most extensive look at a previous year in gaming yet. We've been really doing a escalation over the years.
2023 was like our first, I feel like, real year of trying this, because we did it a bit for 2022.
Yeah.
But like definitely 2023 was like us hitting the format like stride pretty well.
2024 was,
and 2011. Just remember, we did 2011 as well.
Yeah,
and that helped solidify it. So we've had a couple bats at it, and yeah, this one's a good one. I will say there's probably a couple games where I did not actually voice my full opinion on as much as I probably would have liked to. Like, I don't think we really got into Metaphor Refan Zero.
No, we didn't get to talk a whole lot about it.
And so, like, I will say, like, we probably could have gone longer, but as far as the interest of, like, time, like, I think, it being a 2-hour episode, and as much as we covered, was fine. I'm trying to see if there's, like, one game I want to, like, really dig into. Did we really dig into Sparking Zero at all?
We talked a little bit about it, more than we did ReFantasio, because I remember talking a little bit about it because I had played a decent amount before the episode, but we definitely didn't get to talk like too much.
Well, I will say, since we have a little bit of time, Balatro is fantastic and is probably truly the game of 2024. So we're just going to talk about Balatro from now on for the rest of this podcast. Jack, what are your thoughts on Balatro?
I lost a run today. I don't want to talk about Balatro.
Okay, moving on.
And then our last episode that we did, which was the previous episode, was mascot characters, and we covered the Sony State of Play from February 2025. And that was, we were not expecting to end up having a double feature episode, but then Sony was like, hey, we're ready to State of Play. And then I was like, okay, I guess we can cover that on the podcast. And
one of the rare good State of Plays.
It was one of the rare good, there was a legitimately good State of Play, and it's a good thing.
And I think it's the only good State of Play.
And it's a good thing that we had it too, because the mascot characters section, we didn't even quite get an hour out of. It was actually a shorter episode. If we had not done the Sony State of Play, it was probably going to just be a little over an hour after talking about
the mascot. I think the mascot discussion was pretty fun.
It was fun. It was brief, but it was fun. We were just kind of going through them really fast.
Yeah. It's there's only so much you can do. Especially, they've killed off mascot platformers.
Yeah.
Or like mascot games, really.
The only mascots that really exist are the ones that are already established. You're not getting a whole lot of new ones or anything. So,
I mean, sometimes we get new ones. I will say we had a very, very good Patreon video.
We did.
And that will be coming out. Hopefully, it'll be out by the time this podcast goes live.
Yep.
I'm sure you already talked about this, but
yeah, I
will plug it again. It's related to mascot platform, but like mascot characters. I keep saying mascot platformers, but
we did a similar thing with Kirby characters specifically in the past. So we did a revisit of that concept, and we did it with just a bunch of different mascot characters, including some of the most important mascot characters of all time, such as the narrator from Lexine's Quest. So you gotta hear what we have to say about that guy in that.
And don't forget Glover.
And Glover.
And don't forget Glover.
Can't forget Glover.
Yeah, but any further thoughts on the mascot characters in Sony State of Play episode, Jack?
Not really. It was a fun one, but I mean, it was so recent that I'm just like,
yeah,
I
it's like
don't really know what else I could.
You're
I don't really care about.
You're
it
like,
anymore.
we just did it.
Well, we did take a week break in between that and this, so
We did.
It's not as long as it could have been, but yeah.
All right, so that covers everything from this previous year. Let us know in the comments, or if you are happen to be watching live in the chat, how you felt about this previous year of the podcast. I think that as the views have shown, we've been doing a better job than, we're improving over our output from the first season, where we had a lot of good topics, but we might not have been able to cover them as well as we have been starting this season. So hopefully season 3 we are going to continue to do a better and better job at this whole podcasting shtick.
I think one thing that really helps is people like the video format. A lot of podcasts have that.
True.
And so having like a video format,
yeah, because we didn't.
something there.
When we did the podcast, season 1 did not start with us doing video.
We had video, but we weren't necessarily saving the video.
Right. And after a while, we started doing both the video and the audio. So this season has been just fully, except for that one moment when I fucked up.
When he oopsed.
When I oopsed with the Aftermarket Harbor episode. Except for that one, everything has been audio and video, so it's been pretty good. So, real quick, do we have anything we want to talk about that we've been up to? It has been a month. We did take off a week or two, so I'm sure we've been up to some new stuff in that time. Jack?
Has it been? Didn't we just do an episode? Like,
no.
When was our last episode?
It was like a month ago.
Yeah, the mascot characters podcast was.
It was in February.
It was like mid-February.
Oh, I guess I'm just thinking of the video that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just did a video.
We did a Patreon video, which will be out.
The last time we did an episode would have been the 12th of February, so it's literally been a month.
Yeah.
Since we've done a podcast.
Well then.
What have you been up to?
It was a short month.
I mean, it was a short month, but still.
I don't know. Not much, honestly. Bethany and I cleared through. Did I say that we beat Mario 3D World?
I don't remember if you said you'd beaten it. I know you mentioned playing it.
Yeah, you mentioned that you played it, and then you were like, I think you were just starting Bowser's Fury, maybe.
I haven't.
You haven't touched
Bowser's
it.
Fury.
Okay, never mind.
No.
Oh, I think
not
Cloud had
lately.
just had asked if you were going to play it. I think that's what I'm remembering.
Oh,
yes.
Well, no. I mean, we cleared through 3D World. I mean, at least the main game. We have beaten the 9th world. I think we're on world 10, but we kind of just put it down to play other shit. We played through Untitled Goose Game in an afternoon.
Nice.
And that was fun. We started playing Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe pretty recently.
Not even with me? You didn't even wait for me to come over?
When are you going to be over, Landon?
I don't know. Never now. I have 2 children.
Just wait until they're not as high maintenance. Give it a couple years.
I'll have to wait till they're 18 and out of the house.
No.
We'll have Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe Redux by that point.
Probably gonna have a lot more Kirby games between now and then. But no, Return to Dreamland Deluxe looks gorgeous, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't touched it until now. It's still really fun. It's Kirby's Return to Dreamland.
Well, we had basically just played the game, like shortly before they announced and released that
the remake, and I'm just like, well, shit, we just played and beat it for the channel.
Yeah. So,
oh well.
But hey, who got it for you?
Cloud did.
Yeah, I know.
I pointed up because he's up. Which way are you on the
So
stream?
on the stream, I'm to the right. I'm in the middle. You're on the left. So you're pointing at me right now.
Okay, cool. Cloud got it for me.
And then after that, we also decided to team up and get Jack 2 Sonic games. And he played through...
I think I got him the better of the two.
And
has it been that long that we haven't talked about this? Since the last podcast? I believe
so, yeah. Because these games came in...
I think you had just started Forces when we...
No, I was going to say, I think I had at least started Forces by the time...
yeah.
Let's see. Hold on, because we had...
I think you started Forces. I think you've done one Forces episode.
We have a
channel
on our Discord server.
We have a podcast. Shocker. We have a schedule that we post every week for our streams.
I might.
It was Thursday. So, yeah, the first stream for it was February. What would that be? 6th?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like the week before the podcast.
True.
We had done.
So we definitely at least mentioned it.
Yeah. But still,
in the previous, podcast,
we're just bringing up gifts that you've received so far this year.
You've been gifted quite a bit. You got to play Sonic Superstars soon.
Yeah, maybe you should play that next with. Maybe you should open it.
I think it'll be a bit of a. I think it'll be a nice palate cleanser after suffering through Forces.
Yeah,
play with Bethany.
Probably.
So
yeah. Anything else?
Yeah.
Jack?
Anything else?
Sonic Forces depresses me.
I'm surprised he still has it. Honestly.
I feel like I have to keep it, like, just for preservation's sake, but at the same time, I really did not. I went into Forces with an open mind. I really did, and I walked out hating it far more than I expected to. Like, it truly is a terrible game.
I'm so glad I got it for you.
And I'm honestly shocked that, like, the reception on release was, like, as mixed as it was and not way more negative.
I'll admit, your opinion on Forces is way lower than mine. Like, I mean, I don't particularly like it, but I'm just like, it exists. Jack's like, no.
It's a good game.
Jack's like, I hate this thing. This thing sucks.
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
The other thing
it doesn't help that
he had just played Shadow Generations.
True.
That is true.
It had to
perspective is key here, because Shadow Gens came out fairly recently, and that is like one of the best things that Sonic Team has made to this day. And then I went and played Forces right after it, and like and I played both of these on the Switch. Like, not only is Forces like a worse game, but it's also a worse port than Shadow Gens is.
Oh, yeah.
It like does not run quite as well. Like, it's not bad. It's not unplayable by any means, but like there's some pretty obvious pop in certain segments. It's I'm done thinking about Forces now.
I got this. I mentioned this a couple times, but I got the Analog Pocket. I had tax money come through, so I decided my big gift for the year was going to be that. So I've been revisiting a bunch of old games through that, and I also was able to get a hold of copies of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. So I've been playing through Pokemon Blue because that's my preferred version out of the three. It's just the one I played the most as a kid. So it's been really nice to play through it. The screen is really crisp. The option for save states is nice. Just the battery life on this thing is really, really good. Like, I was not expecting the battery life to be so solid, but like, I have not charged this thing in like a week, and I still have decent battery left on it. And it has a good sleep mode that's really energy efficient, so it's pretty easy to turn on and off. Landon, it's funny that you mentioned the whole link cable thing. I don't know why you need two analog pockets, because you can just use the Game Boy link cable and hook it up to your Game Boy. So
because
you need to have two analog pockets just cause?
Yeah, just cause.
Just cause.
I think it's fitting. Well, also, then my girls don't have to fight over who gets an analog pocket.
Later on?
They can both have an analog pocket.
That's true.
Or neither of them can have the analog pocket.
Well, that's probably what's actually going to happen. I'm just going to be playing on two analog pockets.
Oh, wow. No. Wow. But yeah.
That's like when it's like the fucking Simpsons bit where like Homer is like driving home with two ice cream cones in his hands, and he's like, "Lisa, hold the steering wheel for me," when she has no ice cream.
Wow. That's so funny. But yeah, it's mostly been using that. I got back to playing Dragon Quest XI-S since
such a good game.
Since I beat Dragon Quest 9. I gotta get back to it. I haven't played it. I took a week or two off from playing it, but I've been really enjoying it. I finally have a nice full party of 4. I know that there's going to be more characters that join even later, but having a nice full party of 4 now feels pretty good. But yeah, it's a solid game. I'm starting to enjoy the forging mechanic, where you can like make your own weapons and like have stronger equipment by forging it well. So like, I find myself getting into some of the side stuff that I normally wouldn't get into in RPGs lately, just because I'm trying to play through so many of them. But I'm actually like trying to do some side stuff in activities in Dragon Quest XI. So it's been a fun time.
Dragon Quest XI has like so much content.
Yeah.
And I will say this. There is basically, the game is divided into 3 acts. The first 2 acts are basically the main game, and then Act 3 is post-game. I still haven't played Act 3. I hear it's phenomenal, but it was just like, it's such a big game that by the time I got there, I was just like, I have to take a break from it.
Yeah.
But those first 2 acts are great. You're like in the middle of the first act right now. Yeah. You'll know when you get to the next like phase, because shenanigans happen with the world.
Okay.
That's that. But like, there's a lot of fun mechanics in that game, and especially once you like start leveling up and unlocking skill tree stuff, like you can make some nasty stuff with some of the characters. And the party is just like I like all of the party members in that game.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to like choose.
I'm enjoying the characters so far, even though like I can't like tinker with classes like I could in Dragon Quest IX. Just the characters themselves are good, so like it makes up for the fact that I can't customize their classes at least, but it's still great.
I think the skill trees like are diverse enough to where you can customize a character ish to be close to like what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Without having like full class like dedications.
I think if I had to compare, like, if Dragon Quest IX for me is closer to like, say like, is closer to like Final Fantasy VII because of how freeform it is. Dragon Quest XI is like Final Fantasy IX, which is not a bad thing. Like, they're really solid, well-constructed characters that follow an archetype, and you can further use the system to teach them skills and stuff like that and abilities, and just make them stronger based on your preferences. It's kind of like that. Like, you get a more well-rounded cast in exchange for a little less customizability, but it's still really good. So I got to get back to it. I like exploring the overworld. It's a ton of fun to run around in.
Oh my goodness. It's great.
Like, I know that it's one of those, that Dragon Quest is one of those games where like you'd have to be able to invest a lot of time in it, but it does feel like a comfort food RPG where like if you're just willing to get in there and just grind a bunch, just kind of explore and have a good time, like it does a good job. That, and then I've been playing Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 with mods a lot, so I got back to that, and that's been sucking my time in. I also played Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1, and that was interesting. I was recording footage for that game. I'm trying to prep footage to make a video. I don't know if that video will be made, but I have video footage of the game now, so that is interesting.
Hell yeah.
That's everything with me, though. What about you, Landon?
I'd say the biggest things, I mean, I've been playing Balatro quite a bit, and I started Mario's Picross since that dropped on NSO, and I'm actually enjoying that quite a bit. I would say, though, the big two main things, because I beat World of Goo 2, I decided I was going to play Tears of the Kingdom to prep for our Zelda podcast. And because originally the Zelda podcast was going to be our next episode after this, I wanted to get to it quick. But then things got shifted around a little bit, and it's not going to be for a little bit, and that's fine by me, because now I'm playing the Plucky Squire, and I'm a little over halfway through that game, and I've been really enjoying it. The Switch version... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you finished watching Dragon Ball Daima, did you? Or did you?
I did. I was watching that as it was releasing. I
got back to watching the dub. I decided I wanted to watch the dub just because, like, I started the dub, and, like, I realized I really liked the dub's voice cast. So they got to episode 9 up to where I'm at, so...
you're almost halfway through.
Yeah, it's been really good. So I'm glad that I waited for it to come out. I'm excited to watch more when more episodes drop. But it's fantastic. Like I can't get the hate for it because like it's just a fun time. It's just a good adventure with good action scenes, really well animated, just ton of fun humor, just a nice feel good story.
The first, I want to say 14, 15 episodes feel very Dragon Ball, like early Dragon Ball, minus any sort of tournament arc from that. So it's really Red Ribbon Army, it feels like.
Yeah, like the adventure side of Dragon Ball.
Yeah. And then once you get into like the last couple episodes, then it feels like Dragon Ball Z-esque. And I think it does a pretty good job balancing both halves. It has a lot of great characters. We were talking about this. You were like, Pansy's just Bulma.
Yeah, Pansy is just Demon World Bulma. But I like her, and she's good.
And she's a great character.
I like Glorio a lot. Like, Glorio's a lot of fun. So cool.
They introduce a couple... not a huge spoiler. There's two Majins. They get introduced, and I like both of them. They're both very funny. They play off each other really well. They play off one of the main antagonists, one of the driving forces of the plot, really well. And it's there's a really good scene a little bit later in the episode, in the series that
I'm looking forward
I think you're going to enjoy, that focuses on them and someone else.
Because the episode 9 that ended with the introduction of, I think, Majin Ku, the yellow guy.
They're both yellow.
Oh, they're both yellow. Okay.
Because they're both basically Cybermen Majin Boos.
Right,
yeah. Because they use the Majin the Cybermen.
Seeds. Yeah.
Yeah. So the distinction between them, you'll notice, is one is like Kid Buu, and the other one's like a fatter Buu.
Okay, so the Kid Buu one is the one that was introduced.
Yeah.
He had the same like stature.
Yep.
So
but he talks really well and everything.
Yeah, I didn't. So they only just like showed the
right.
profile, and that was it.
Right. He just shows up. He's a lot of fun. And then his brother is great. So you're gonna enjoy both of them.
All right.
Yeah. It's a great episode. Or it's a great series. People that were giving it hate are just just assholes.
Yeah.
It's
anything else
it's
new?
20 episodes of fun.
I just figured we would talk about Daima a little bit because that is topical.
Yeah. It's really just that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah,
we're just gonna let you guys go with that. We'll see you next time when we begin the third season of the Gaming Stooges Talks podcast. Ooh, spooky. So, thank you all for tuning in. Roll the outro. Good night and bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gaming Stooges Talks podcast. If you enjoyed us, consider subscribing to our podcast RSS feed, or follow us on youtube.com/gamingstooges and twitch.tv/gamingstooges for more gaming content. If you'd like to chat with us, join our Discord. The link can be found in the episode description. We also want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Your continued support means a lot to us. Not already one? Please take a look at what we have to offer anyone who becomes a patron at patreon.com/gamingstooges. See you next time!